This is the dialogue, discussion, debate between God and Moses at the burning bush, where God wants to send him to play his role in liberating the Jews, and Moses has objections. And he raises quite a wide variety of objections. Now up to the next to last objection, which is verse 10, in the middle of the page. Moses said to Hashem, "Please, my Lord, I'm not a man of words, not since yesterday, nor since the day before yesterday, nor since you first spoke to your servant, for I am heavy-mouthed and heavy of speech." Moses was a stutterer. He could not speak straight. Now before this, Moses is raising what one could think of as matters of principle. I can't speak to an emperor, and the Jewish people aren't worthy of it, and they won't believe me, they won't follow me. Now he's protesting a personal disability. I'm not a good speaker. By the way, Rav Hirsch says that's precisely why he was chosen. Let no one say that his persuasive rhetoric and his charisma were what encouraged the Jews to follow him. You have to imagine the thing. He comes to speak, and his brother is there, and Moses stutters this out to his brother, and his brother speaks it for him. That's not going to make a good impression. If you're talking about wowing people with psychological appeal, that ain't going to do it. And that's precisely why he was chosen. By the way, the oral tradition says that at the revelation at Sinai, he and everybody else was healed of their disabilities, because the point of the disability was only to dispel the thought that maybe he convinced them because he was such a powerful, charismatic person. At any rate, that's his complaint. His complaint is that I'm not capable of speaking. Now, verse 10. Shem said to him, "Who makes a mouth for man? Or who makes one dumb," that means incapable of speech, "or deaf, or sighted, or blind? Is it not I, Hashem? So now go, I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say." Now I want to suggest something here. I can't prove this, though I have asked people about it, and people who know more than I do, and who are inclined to agree with me. If you read through the whole dialogue, as we have seen part of it, the whole dialogue proceeds in normal, regular speech. God's answer here is not normal, regular speech. Moses said, "I can't speak." Well, God should have said, "Who makes a mouth? Or who makes one dumb? I'll be with your mouth." Did anybody talk about being deaf? Or sighted? Or blind? What's that doing there? And he answers him with questions. Who makes a mouth? Is it not I, Hashem? A person who has a sense for literary style, and this too is important, the text is written for us. Any human sensitivity is a genuine basis on which to query the text. The answer might be, study the text broadly, and you'll see that the text doesn't care about it, but it's certainly an appropriate starting point. If we notice a change in style, we have a right to ask, is the text communicating something to us by communicating in a style utterly different from its norm? I hear in these words a rebuke. Moses, you're complaining that you can't speak? Who are you talking to? You're talking to the creator of the universe, and in particular, your creator. You don't think I took that into account when I chose you? You think I forgot it? Who creates man altogether? Who gives man all of his capacities? The capacities that you have aren't an accident, including the inability to speak, or deafness, or being sighted, or being blind. This already, I'm just explaining to you how I feel it, and someone could contest this, but I feel God sort of rearing himself up, drawing himself up and away from Moses. Up until now, we've been talking on a par. Up until now, I've tolerated your questions and I've given you straight answers. But this is going too far. This is going too far. At this point, you've crossed the line. And I'm letting you know by the way I'm responding to you. And he says to him, so now go. Enough already. And now go. And this is a prelude to the very next two sentences. Moses replies, please, my Lord, send through whomever you will send. Anybody but me. Anybody but me. I don't want to go. And the next thing is, the wrath of Hashem burned against Moses. I see a gradation here. Moses' last substantive complaint is one that's unworthy. God responds by this august use of poetry to say it is unworthy. You're not losing sight of who you're talking to, losing sight of the context of the discussion. And Moses does it again, even again. So at that point, God gets angry at him, whatever that means. I'll explain that in a minute. But I see a progression here. Indeed, I forget who makes this remark, but this kind of bitter, ironic remark. If you weren't prepared to go anyway, Moses, if no matter what kinds of answers you get, no matter how good they are, you're going to refuse at the end, what business did you have in asking the questions? The questions were phony. You were just, you weren't going to, it isn't as if you ask the question and say, well, if I get a good answer, I'll go. If you get a bad answer, you're not going to go anyway. So the questions are a dodge. One wanted to suggest that maybe he just wanted the answers. He just wanted to know the answers, since he wasn't planning to go anyhow. And at this point, God says, I've had it. I've had it with you. Are we together so far? Now it teaches something very general. God has no psychology. God isn't a being with a character and experiences and emotional responses and so forth and so on. So when the Torah seems to describe God's psychology, it's got to be doing something else. Usually, the description of psychology comes together with the description of an action, and then it indicates the character of the action, the quality of the action. If there's a punishment, will the punishment come with mercy, or will the punishment come without mercy? Will the punishment stop at what it says? Will it contain a warning for something else in the future? Here is almost unique in the Tanakh. We have a description, so to speak, of God's psychology with no action attached. So the commentators, indeed the Talmud says, obviously, if we don't tolerate descriptions of God's psychology literally, that's got to indicate some element other than that. Here the oral tradition fills it in. A little bit based on the continuation. Let's read the continuation, then I'll comment to this and I'll tell you. So, the wrath of Hashem burned against Moses, and he said, Is there not Aaron your brother, the Levite? I know that he will surely speak. Moreover, behold, he is going out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will rejoice in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I shall be with your mouth and with his mouth, and teach you what you are to do. He shall speak to the people, and it will be that he'll be your mouth, you'll be his leader. Take this staff in your hand, which you'll perform the signs. And he goes. So now, Moses' words are extremely vague. Just send with anybody, leave me out of it. God's response is, your brother. Your brother's going to speak with you, speak for you. So if it's a repetition of the speech problem, I'm giving you a way in which that will be solved. Okay, you're not going to be charismatic, but you want the speech to be communicated in a clear way, you'll talk to your brother and he'll speak it out for you. And he'll rejoice when he sees you. So what? So what? So the oral tradition fills in here. One of Moses' concerns was this. His brother Aaron, how are they related in age?
He's older.
Aaron's older. Moses has been absent from the Jewish people for 80 years. Who's been leading them in the meantime? Aaron's been leading them in the meantime. Their father, Amram, was the leader of the previous generation, and Aaron took over for him. How is Aaron going to feel when I appear on the scene as the younger brother and take over? God said, that's what's worrying you? Listen, he's coming out to meet you. When he sees you as the new leader, he's going to rejoice. You're not judging Aaron correctly. You're worried that he's going to be upset, feel displaced by you coming to save the Jewish people? You haven't read him correctly. But it's more than that. As we know, Aaron becomes the high priest. The oral tradition says that was supposed to have been Moses' position. Moses should have had the entire leadership. He functioned as king. He should have been the high priest also. He should have had everything. And here's where he lost it. He lost it here. There are hints to this idea, which I will share with you in a few minutes. Small hints, remes, small hints, but they create a picture that Moses lost it here. And that's why it says he was angry. The anger refers to an action. The action is depriving him of that distinct position, which was supposed to be his, and now he was deprived of it. We together so far? Okay, now on 3:11, God says to Moses, 15 at the top of the page, "You shall speak to him, Aaron, put the words in his mouth, and I shall be with your mouth and with his mouth, and teach you what you're both to do." Teach you both what you're to do. "He shall speak for you to the people, and it will be that he will be your mouth, and you will be his leader." Okay, the translation is correct, but the Hebrew word is shocking. If you look 4 lines down in the Hebrew, 4th word, the ato and you, tihi elo, you will be for him, lelohim. Elohim is usually a name for God. God says to Moses, you will be Aaron's Elohim. Does that set your teeth on edge a little bit? The fact is that the word Elohim doesn't always refer to God. Almost always it refers to God. Sometimes it's used for the false gods of other peoples. Sometimes it's used for angels, and sometimes it's used for people. And this is one of the cases. So when you see the word Elohim, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what's it referring to now? Like in the case of the golden calf, when the people say, Aseh lanu Elohim, don't just breeze by and get another coffee. You have to stop and think what it might mean in that context. We'll do the golden calf in great detail. But just pointing out, there are a number of places in the Tanakh where the word Elohim refers to a person. When King Saul is embattled by the Philistines, this is in the first book of Samuel, I think it's chapter 28, if I'm not mistaken. And the prophets have deserted him, and he has no input from God. He goes to a necromancer, someone who raises the dead, which is forbidden, but that's what he did. And he asked to speak to Samuel. And she goes through her mumbo jumbo, and then she goes into a fright. Some of the commentators say that she was just a phony, knocking under the table and so forth and so on. It's the first time it ever worked, and she had a vision. And Saul sees that she's in this fright, so he says to her, "What do you see?" And she says, "Elohim re'isi olim min ha'aretz." I see Elohim coming up out of the ground. Well, it is Samuel. In fact, Saul speaks to Samuel. Samuel says to him, "Tomorrow you're going to be with me." And the next battle, Saul is killed. She knows what she's doing. She's succeeding in race. Samuel traveled the length and breadth of the Jewish people every year before he died. He died only some months before. But she used the word in a vocabulary that expressed the vision. To her, she was filled with dread. So she used that word. Anyway, I'm just telling you here. So what does this mean? You're going to speak God's words to your brother. He's going to hear in your voice my words. Then a word like Elohim, which expresses a recognition of awesomeness and authority and power and godliness, that's the word that Aaron will be able to use for you. I don't think we want to press into the text that Aaron had some deep problems with theology and may have confused his brother with the creator of the universe. Probably not, right? So the indication here is what the word Elohim can mean. And it can refer to anything that expresses awesomeness, authority, power, and godliness. The word Elohim can be used to describe that. I'm going to show you one of the hints that I mentioned. You know, I suppose, all of you, that there are musical notes on the page in the Hebrew There are notes. They're not in the Torah scroll, but they're on the page. And the one person who reads from the Torah reads the words on the basis of those notes. Those notes function as punctuation. And therefore they are very important. You learn how to read them. It punctuates the text. And of course, as you very well know, if you punctuate a text one way or another way, it can change the meaning of the text. There is one musical note which appears only 4 times in the entire Torah. It's called a shalshelis.
It's like the Rabbi 3 times, yeah?
No, the Rabbi goes down. Oh, yeah, that's what it's written. Yeah, but when you read it, it goes up. I'll show you 3 places in the book of Genesis where it appears. Let's see. The first one is Lot coming out of stone. That's in here. Take a look on page 87. The 2 angels come to the city of Sodom, and they tell Lot, we're going to destroy the place, and you've got to leave. Verse 15, towards the bottom of the page, just as dawn was breaking, the angels urged Lot on, saying, get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are present, lest you be swept away because of the sin of the city. 16, still he lingered. Still he lingered. If you take a look in the Hebrew, from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right in the middle of the line, after the 2 dots, vayismamo, and over the second mem, there's this wiggly line, and it's a long note. The longest, I think, of all the notes. Someone with a voice would read it. Vayismamo, up and down 3 times. He lingered. He hesitated. That's one place. Next place is in Chaisora. God sends Eliezer as an agent to find a wife for Isaac. Comes to the well. It's verse 12. He said, addressing God, and the word in the Hebrew is 5 lines up from the bottom, just by accident. In the middle of the line, you see Vayomar, says he said, and the same mark is over the mem. It's also a mem. That's just an accident, right? And when he said, Hashem, God of my master Abraham, may you so arrange it for me on this day that you do kindness with my master Abraham. See, I stand here by the spring of the water. Daughters are coming. Let it be that the maiden to whom I say, please let me drink out of your jug, she'll be the right one. Okay, that's the second place. Third place, Joseph is in the house of the Egyptian in the 2:15. Potiphar's house. Verse 7, in the middle of the page. After these things, his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. She said, lie with me. But he adamantly refused, which is a good translation. And the word in Hebrew is vayisarev. This is from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines up. After the 2 dots, vayima'en. And there's the same long figure there on the aleph. What's the common element? The common element in all 3 cases is someone who's facing an inner conflict. He's struggling with an inner conflict. In the case of Lot, he doesn't want to leave. He's addicted to Sodom. And they tell him it's an imminent destruction. And even so, talk to an alcoholic, talk to a drug addict, talk to other addicts. They know they're destroying themselves. And part of them wants to leave, but part of them hasn't got the will to fight the other part. And by the way, he doesn't really win because the angels grab him by the hands and drag him out. In the case of Joseph, it was a struggle, a plain struggle. His master's wife wants him, and he has to struggle with himself. Case of Eliezer, Eliezer is playing a dangerous game. The Talmud is split as to whether Eliezer committed a crime. He's asking God for a sign. Asking God for signs is forbidden. You're supposed to make your decisions on basis of principle. No reading the entrails of birds and no eating tea leaves. You know, looking for your shadow on whatever day it is in February. In America, you're supposed to go out and look for your shadow. Hedgehog's Day or something.
Groundhog.
Groundhog Day. See, there's a hedgehog and a groundhog. He's asking for a sign. Now, he did ask for a sign that was relevant for the character of a good wife. He asked for a sign but he's hesitating because he knows he's walking a fine line. Some say he stepped over the line. So he's hesitating. Shall I ask for a sign? Shall I not ask for a sign? How shall I do it? Okay? That's the common element in the three of them. Hold on to what we're doing. This is the one where we close the circle. This is a long description of Moses inaugurating his brother Aaron as high priest and Aaron's sons as priests. Moses did the inauguration because for 1 week Moses functioned as a priest. For 1 week. There were 7 days of preparation for the inauguration. This was the 8th day. Call it 8 days. The inauguration of his brother as high priest required the slaughter and performance of several different sacrifices. This is the last sacrifice. The last move, inaugurating his brother as high priest. And this word on the top line, and he slaughtered it. Vayishchat. In the middle of the first line, after the 2 dots, you see that on the ches, you have that mark. So I noticed that. I thought to myself, okay, in Genesis, the 3 uses of this mark clearly indicate inner conflict. What's it doing here? Then I put 2 and 2 together, and I thought to myself, what is Moses' state of mind here? Is it there, but for the grief of God go I? I should have been in that spot. That's my spot. Being high priest is my spot. And I have to give it away because I failed. 1 second. So this is a hint, just a hint, and I don't think I saw it anywhere else. But I believe it's correct, and I believe it's correct because there's further confirmation for it. But you understand what I'm saying here? It's that terrible inner turmoil that I'm giving over to my brother, which should have been mine. Now, there are 2 pieces of evidence to support it. One is that when God says to Moses, you're going to die, he says you're going to die like your brother died. Okay, everybody dies. He could have said you're going to die like Joe died. No, he's going to die like your brother died by a divine kiss and so forth and so on. But the rabbinic tradition says, we see from here that meant something to Moses. He wanted to die like his brother died. And in one respect, he didn't have it. And that was that when Aaron died, his son, Pinchas, and his son Elazar, came, I'm getting mixed up. One of his sons came up with him, and Aaron was wearing the clothes of a Kohen, and Moses took the clothes off him and put them onto his son. Aaron saw his son stepping into his shoes before he died, which is a great comfort when someone dies. And Moses didn't have that because Moses' sons did not take over his position. Joshua took over his position, and there were certain problems with his sons and grandsons. So it's another thing. Had he been the high priest, his son would have been high priest also, and he lost that. He lost out on that. There's another thing. There is one Parsha in the Torah, Parsha Tetzaveh, where Moses' name does not appear. I mean, aside from the ones that exist before he comes into the story, but from Shmos on till the end of the Torah, his name appears in all of the parshas except that one. Why is it missing? even if you'll say that the rabbis created the divisions in the Parshios, they knew what they were doing. And if they divided it up in this way, that means they set up a Parsha which specifically doesn't have Moses' name in it. We will say that the rabbis did it that they were divided by God's Spirit and so forth and so on. But anyway, either way, I don't mind. Well, the rabbinic tradition has an explanation, and the Baal HaTurim brings it, and that is because Moses said at the sin of the golden calf, and God said he's going to destroy the people, Moses said, if you're not going to forgive them, blot me out of the book that you've written. Okay. Nothing Moses says, or even other great people say, goes to waste. Blot me out of the book, so you're going to be blotted out. There'll be a portion of the book where you don't appear. And the reason why it's Parshas Tetzaveh is because if you're looking at the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, the whole Torah in sequence, you come to the Parsha in which the sin of the golden calf is described, then keep going all the way to the end, and then go around and start again at the beginning. The last place you reach is Tetzaveh. After that comes the sin of the golden calf again. So if in sin of the golden calf he says, blot me out of the book, it's going to come to fruition. It's going to come to fruition as far away as possible. Keep going with the narrative. Got to go all the way to the end, come around to the beginning, go through all the book of Genesis to here. That means it was delayed as long as possible from that spot. That's one. The Baal HaTurim, and by the way, not all editions of the Baal HaTurim have this. So if you look this up in a Mikras Gedolos, which has the Baal HaTurim, and you don't see it, look at another edition. Second reason that the Baal HaTurim gives is that in that Parsha of Tetzaveh is a description of the clothes of the Kohanim and the clothes of Aaron, which make him into the Kohen Gadol. And the Baal HaTurim says Moses has Ogmas Nefesh, he has bitterness in his soul, having to learn the instructions by which to make his brother the high priest, because he lost it. He should have had it, and he lost it. So his name isn't mentioned, not to cause extra bitterness. He was given those instructions. So what you have here is a series of hints, tiny hints, but they create a gigantic impact. Moses, one of the greatest Jews who ever had lived. But there were things that bothered him. There were things that bothered him, even personal things that bothered him. Part of the human condition. And it helps to give a balanced picture of who Moses was. Yeah.
Also, if you look at where the trope starts, where the Shalshal says Chof Tes is like an indication that Moses sinned.
Oh, I see. Chestaf, you mean?
Yeah.
No, okay. It's part of a word, and the shorish of the word, the root of the word is shin ches tav. Shin ches.
Oh, but the trope starts on the.
Oh no, it's always on the next to last letter. On all the cases, yeah, it's at the end. It's the end of the word. Anyway, that would be a hint that I would have to see that someplace. It's too far. But anyway, that's just an indication of this aspect. And having gone this far, I'll tell you an observation that my wife made, which I've shared with many people and I've not gotten a good answer to. My wife is very good at things like this. She said, one of the great features of Jewish success of the Jewish people was when God offered them the Torah, 2 days before the revelation at Sinai, 2 days before. And they said the famous words, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, we will hear. They accepted it, open-ended, unconditionally. It's a great distinction of the Jewish people. And endless literature talks about that's a basic character of the Jewish people, so forth and so on. Okay, she asked the following question. Where in Moses' life do you see that characteristic? Where do you see it? Where God will say something, and the person will say, boy, that's strange. I wonder what that means. And it seems to contradict ABC and C. I don't know. Can't do that. I go fight with it, object. No, I won't. It's God. I'll take it. I won't understand it. I take it open-endedly, unconditionally, and I'll do it. Where do you see that in Moses' life? You don't see it anywhere. Not once. The greatest Jewish leader of all time, and this key characteristic of Jewish spirituality, you don't see in his life. Indeed, when Moses comes to the people and he comes to Pharaoh and he says, I want you to let the people go. And Pharaoh says, you're a troublemaker, and I'm going to make things worse. And Moses immediately goes to God and says, what? You didn't free them? Things got worse, not better. Why did you bother sending me? And God says, the oral tradition says, God says, woe for those who are lost and who are no longer found. I promised the land to Abraham. I promised the land to Jacob, Isaac. I promised the land to Jacob. They didn't see anything. They didn't see anything. They didn't take possession of it. They had no ownership over it, no control over it. They didn't complain. They didn't object. And you've been here a few weeks. You want to see the end of the whole process right away. You're up in arms. Woe for those who are lost and not found in the world. Okay, but there's got to be a meaning to it. It's got to teach us something. It's a fact about Moses' career. What is it supposed to teach us? What are we supposed to learn from it? I've asked many people. I have not gotten an answer. So you're hearing it from me. Ask. If you get an answer, send me an email. I'll be very, very interested to see it. Now, having said all of that, I want to pick up something else that I don't understand. Back to the dialogue with God at the burning bush. Here are God's instructions to Moses how he should initiate the process of the liberation. Verse 18, at the bottom of the page. They will heed your voice, the people. As I translated last time, they'll listen to your voice. You and the elders of Israel shall come to the king of Egypt and say to him, Hashem, God of the Hebrews, happened upon us. And now please let us go on a 3-day journey in the wilderness. We shall bring offerings to Hashem, our God. Now that's a text, correctly enclosed in the English in quotation marks. Let's take a look at what Moses actually says when he appears before Pharaoh. Chapter 5. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, so said Hashem, the God of Israel, send out my people that they may celebrate for me in the wilderness. Golly, that wasn't the text that he was instructed to give. Let's go back and look again. He was supposed to say, Hashem, the God of the Hebrews, happened upon us. Now, those who have been here for a little while, what does that ring in your ears, happened upon us? Remember we talked about Vayikra? That's the language that was used for God's relationship to Bilam, the non-Jewish prophet, by accident, happenstance. When God said to Moses, Vayikra, I'm calling to you, Moses said to God, don't write call me just singling me out. No, make it happenstance, don't pick me out. God dictates to use the language of happenstance. God happened upon us. Moses and Aaron just omit that. Then who are they supposed to be speaking in the name of? The God of the Hebrews. Hebrews is the name of a people. Israel is the name of a nation. So the description God gives is a downgraded description. The God of the Hebrews. And God is, did they repeat that? Yeah. And then they're supposed to say, please. They don't say please. And then they're supposed to say a 3-day journey. And they don't say 3-day journey. The message is utterly different. Why do they do that? And look at the reaction on 3:13. Pharaoh says, who is Hashem that I should heed his voice and send out Israel? I don't know Hashem, and I will not send out Israel. Listen, guys, you're talking about the God of this group of slaves? Maybe they have a God. Terrific. Congratulations. He's obviously powerless. I've been enslaving you for 90 years. He hasn't done anything. I'm standing for the powers of the world, the sun, the Nile. Myself, I'm also a God, I'm part of the club, right? He's dictating to me what I'm supposed to do. But they were told to say, please. Please means, we recognize that you're in control. We're asking for a favor. They express it as a dictation. So he says, you're out of court. Now watch. Now they go back to the formulation that God gave, but not exactly, as I'll show you. So they said, the God of the Hebrews, oh, that's what you're supposed to say, happened upon us. let us now go. Yes, they're asking. See, they should have translated, let us please go, because it's the same word for please. Let us please now go for a journey, for a 3-day journey. They put in the 3-day journey, which they left out. And we should bring offers to Hashem, lest he strike us dead with the plague of the sword. That wasn't what God told them to say. But now they've changed their tone. Instead of dictating to the emperor of Egypt what he must do, they're asking for a favor because they're in danger. If we don't offer the sacrifice, we're going to be hurt. So we're asking you for a favor. They've changed their tune into the tune which, the tune that God wanted them to say. Of course, now it's too late. They first started with a bold, brash, chutzpahdik challenge. And Pharaoh said, no. Now, there's a subtlety in the Hebrew which you don't get in the English. When it says here in 3, the God of the Hebrews happened upon us, if you look in the Hebrew, 4 lines up from the bottom, the next to last word, the word is nikra with an aleph. When God said to say that he happened upon you, he spelled it with a hey. Nikra with a hey is the verb that you have with respect to Bilam. It means to happen. Kara, kuf, resh, hey means something that happens by accident. Nikra, although the aleph is from the root, which means to call. But nikra can't mean to call here, so it's got to look at it as an alternate spelling of nikra with a hey, but it's an alternate spelling. They put an aleph instead of a hey. So even here, they couldn't just take dictation and give over the speech that God dictated to them. It's an amazing event. It's an amazing event. God told them what to say, and they didn't say it. And not only it wasn't just a minor variation. What they said is different in its tone, in its character. Why they did that, I don't know. That's another question you can ask people. Here, I haven't checked, 200 or 300 commentaries, so I would guess that the answer. But the standard commentaries into which I looked didn't address the question. But it's something which needs some explanation. Okay?